Hello, everyone. I guess everyone hears me. Welcome to the Webmardi. I'm really happy to be with you tonight. So for tonight, here we go. So for tonight, we'll have a small introduction to what the Webmardi is all about, and then we will have Yassine giving his talk about animation. And we will have a small slot for questions, so you will be able to ask questions through YouTube comments or Twitch comments, and then we will moderate them and ask them to the speaker at the end of the talk. We will also announce the next Webmardi and talk about the videos that are available to our YouTube channel at the end of the event. Oh. The Webmardi. The Webmardi is basically an association composed of 4 members, Camille, Nelson, Kevin, and myself. We are organizing events about the web every first Tuesday of each month. Usually we do physical events which are located in the west part of Switzerland, so around Lausanne, Fribourg, or Geneva. And due to the pandemic, we are doing this online at the moment. We are sponsored by Leap and Antistatic. They help us to get all the tools we need to run that meetup, as well as sometimes paying for the apparel when we held physical events. We also have sponsors, JetBrains and Smashing Magazines. So if ever you're looking for a code editor, look at what JetBrains does. They do great editors. And also look at Smashing Magazines. They have awesome articles about the web and tutorials if you want to learn about the web. So tonight we have Yassine. He's going to talk about animation. Yassine, are you there? Hello, Yassine. So, welcome to the Webmardi. Thank you for accepting the invitation. I won't talk that much more, and I will leave you the stage.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to the Webmardi program to welcome me. It's I don't do talks every time, but when I do, it's like I really want to talk about something that is dear to me. And today it's something that I've encountered quite a bit in my career is how to talk about animation with developers. So whenever you're doing your web project, you arrive at the critical point where you have to like hand over your design to the developers. So we have learned a lot on how to do this, like handing out tokens, making design style guides, guidelines, however you call it. But when it comes to animation, it becomes really hard. It becomes very tricky. You have many stuff on your hands. You have a lot of tools. So yeah, I will just present some of them and I will share my point of view. I mean, the goal of this talk is not that I preach something. I mean, I will preach a little bit, of course, but I will also just share my vision on that. And also I would be very curious if at the end of the talk, you would be able to communicate with me, ask questions, share your point of view with me, and don't hesitate to connect with me or LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever. So I used to be a developer, a front-end developer. I used to love, and I still actually love, animating interfaces. I was on that side, implementing animations, imagining them even, most of the time imagining them. And then I switched to the design part because I wanted to be more in control of the design and the animation process. So what I'm going to focus on today is web animations on the web, not specifically on products. You can maybe apply this on products, I don't know, to be honest. The second focus on that is that you are going, I mean, I'm assuming here that you are working with a team that is not 100% on point with design and animation. They are mainly like engineers, probably. They aren't very familiar with the design world. You just introduce them a little bit to that. They make their marks, but it's not this yet. So the point here is like, I'm going to come to this question where it's like, who should be in charge? Is the designer going to code? Is the developer going to design? I mean, this is the never-ending question, right? You're used to that. So I'm going to give you 5 points. I hope this is going to be short enough because there's a lot to talk about. And I'll take a little example also during this talk, just to image my point. So the first point is to have a common dictionary. Most of the time when we are at the start of a project, we tend to talk to our developer in this way, like we're saying, like, look, man, can you see the icon and like make it whoosh, and then it goes like whoosh, and then you start to use like those little funny sounds, and they don't really mean something, to be honest. So the most important part is to create a set of words, learn them, teach them even. Maybe you have someone who is filled with imagination and will understand those weird words, but this is very unlikely. So instead of saying this, you could use other words. You have a lot of words on your tool belt, and you could be using like CSS property, for example. You could be using like the vocabulary that you find on the animation principles. Can you make it squash? Can you make it stretch? Can you add some more momentum to this button, for example? So for instance, if you would say like, I'm taking an example here. If you're taking very, very specifically about a certain thing, you would say like, I'd like this picture to appear from a clipping mask that scales up from the bottom with a cart out function as soon as it enters the viewport. So this is the most extreme example that you can take, but at least it shows you how specific you can be about talking about animations. Here I'm mixing a bit of CSS properties, and I also like state where it's coming from, which property is going to be animated. That helps a lot. The second is to establish common guidelines for handoffs. So when you are giving your design or your animation and you want to document them, you have 3 types, or at least I listed 3 types of things that you can do. So you've sent the design to your clients, everything is super excited, it's like the most amazing After Effects file you've ever done, it's super clean. Client is like, yes, we're gonna nail this, it's going to be amazing. And then your fellow developers are like, oh my God, like what has he done? This is so hard to develop, I don't know why I'm going to do this. So I'm going to take this quick example here. This is a simple button. When it hovers, the image on the left should scale up. Play button is going to appear inside of the circle, and on the right, the voir nos stories, voir nos story will slide to the right. Oh, I think I've missed, yes. So the hard way. This is the first one. This one is like the brute force one. If you have enough time, if you have enough budget for this, go for it. It's maybe the best way to talk about animation with a developer when this one is not very familiar with the world of animations. So you're basically going to take full on all the process. You're going to document absolutely every property, every CSS property that you're going to use. So for instance, here I've set an idle state with all the timing function that I'm going to use, the state, the beginning state, which is scale 1, opacity 0, and the label is going to be this way. And then I have the hover state. So the hover state, same timing function, then the duration is going to be that, scale that, etc., etc., etc. This is super time consuming, but I think this is the most specific thing that you can do in your documentation. As a parenthesis, I would like to do a little promo. There is this plugin on After Effects. I love After Effects, by the way. Like, this is my go-to software for animation. I find it much, much better than Principle. I'll talk about this a bit later on. But there is this plugin on After Effects called Flow. So Flow allows you to the Bezier easing curve, sorry, much easily than just like using the good old keyframe editor on After Effects. And then you can also copy paste the exact value that you can translate to CSS. So this is super nifty. go buy it. I highly recommend it. Going to gain a lot of time. Then there's the cheap way. So cheap way is going to be quick. It's you have your video, everybody is super happy, and you just send it to the developer, and you're like, deal with that. So of course you will see many surprises, especially if the developer is not very experienced in animations. If they don't have an eye, you have to come back and forth many times, correct absolutely every little timing that you have here and there. I really don't advise this unless you're with a developer who is like super animation savvy, but hey, it requires also a lot of time. Then there's the last one. It's like my go-to. I call this the lean way, for the lack of a better word. The lean way is basically you're going to start your project with tokens. So when I will do my After Effects animation, I will use constantly the same kind of easing curves that I will use. And then you can copy paste it directly into your file project. You can even implement it in your boilerplate, however you call it. And then it will facilitate the work of the developer. Then you just say like, this button will use like the first easing, then for example, the picture will come from the right and we'll use the ease out back. And then it's just going to be a copy paste again. Fairly easy. Then about timing, which is very crucial. I use actually a scale for the element. So as anything would happen in the world or in traditional animations, usually the smaller thing is going to go much quicker than the harder thing. Even though it's not that true physically, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but something big is going to go way faster. Anyway, I'm diverging. So keep this scale in mind, give it to your developer and say like, okay, the most small thing is going to be 0.25 seconds. It will have a duration of 0.25 seconds compared to, for example, I don't know, let's say huge transition, a page transition can take 1.2 seconds. And that gives like a mental scale to the developer and they will be like, okay, now I understand a little bit more how it works. I can time it without being super anxious if I'm doing a good job or not, without asking my fellow designer if I'm doing it right. I have a lot of liberty in that. The fourth point is to get the tools that suit you best. So you have many tools to reach your objective, right? Some prefer After Effects, some prefer Flinto. Is that still a thing? I don't know. Some prefer Principle. Principle is actually really great for highly interactive prototypes, but it doesn't give you the same, unless I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't give you like the same abilities as After Effects does. For instance, copy pasting easy curves for your timing functions. So as a designer, you can choose one of these, feel very comfortable with them. Also, for developers, take your time, really take your time to choose your favorite framework for animation. That's very important. You can take like a very small framework or a very small script, for example, for doing a very tiny stuff. For example, I've seen like these, how's it called? These NPM modules that just do like bounce or stretch or something like that. Maybe it's not very useful to just use one script for one thing. Probably gzap or Framer Motion can already have this set up inside their package. So there will be your best friend in this aspect. My favorite goes to gzap. I think this is the most complete, but I've heard that Framer Motion also does a very good job. Lastly, I also use CodePen. So I also invite the designers, if you're courageous enough and you know a little bit of code, to dive inside CodePen. It's a very efficient code editor. You just have to code your buttons. You could timing that you want. You're full on. You have full control on what you want to create, and then you just send off to your fellow developer. And then they can. I mean, it happened to me. Like I just created a button on CodePen. I had a specific vision. I didn't have time to do it in After Effects, and then to document all the timing and stuff like this. So do a little bit of mix and match, see what works best for you. You also have other tools. I would be very happy actually if you have like something interesting that you would suggest. Pro tip, Actually, many of you have heard probably about Lottie. But Lottie can also save you a ton of time, especially if you're using After Effects. I told you that After Effects is amazing. So instead of asking your developer to animate something specific or something very complex, it can be super time consuming. And also it's not interactive. Use Lottie. Very, very powerful tool. It will just translate your After Effects animation into an SVG animation that you can scale, that is responsive. I'm thinking, for example, about page transition. Page transition could be a huge mess to animate in front end, especially when they are highly complex. So do a Lottie animation, transfer it, and then all the developer has to do is like, I'm exaggerating, but it's basically you put a state play and then you put a state pause, sorry, and then you reverse the animation. It's very easy to use. And finally, share your inspiration. I find it very important to create a sort of culture around animation, around what drives you when you're creating some stuff. And sharing your little inspirations while you are researching for animation or just because you love it. For example, you see like, I don't know, an animation in a movie, you see something on a video game that really appeals you see something on Twitter, share it, show it to your colleagues, like bathe them into this culture. I find that a brief is way much it's easily understood when your brain is loaded basically with inspiration. And who knows, probably next time your colleague can understand much easily what you're talking about if you're using the all these weird words. So yeah, I just want to end this presentation with a quick note. We usually tend to, in a lot of companies, to consider animation as the whipped cream on top of the project. But we see that many times it costs a lot of time and money to do something on top of that. Maybe I'm preaching people that are already convinced about that, but I think it's important to hammer the nail once again. When you are going to add animations at the end of the project, that's a really bad idea. That's a no-go because you are going to add more complexity on top of your DOM. You are going to add more complexity on top of your design. So try as best as you can to think about it beforehand. Ask your manager some more time about it. And believe me, it's going to be great at the end of the day. Yeah, I mean, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening. And if you have any question, drop them. Don't hesitate a single second. I would be very happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yassine. Thank you for your talk. It was pretty inspiring, and yeah, in my early career, it was really frustrating for me to deal with animation and how create them and how to communicate with the designers. So we have some questions for you now about your talk. Some of them are from me, and one of the most important question for me is how do you sell animation to the end client? Like you said, if you should not take it as the top of the cream. So how do you sell them? What do you say to your client so you buy them before you start the project?
I get it. That's super hard actually to have. I think we're only at the beginning of having clients that understand the value of animation. You could start out by just selling like websites that are the regular price, but add animation on top of it. And I mean, there is like this agency who says like, bring the chocolate. So animation would be like a premium on top of that is free. And then you will build a portfolio and say to the other clients like, look how amazing this website is, or look how amazing our production is. And they will be like, I want the same. So you can say like, yeah, you can show them something and they will be like, I want the same. You can also say, go to the rational way and say like, animation can actually provide more value to the UX, bring attention to one point or another, bring some delight, increase, how do you say, conversion? Is this how you say conversion? Yeah, conversion. yeah, all these arguments are hands, but I really, really understand that people right now don't seem all ready to implement animation in that. So it might take a lot of time, some convincing, and
yeah. And did you ever face any issue with estimation about animation? Because sometimes it's so complex to integrate that it takes ages and costs a lot. I don't know, maybe you never faced an issue, but
that might take a lot of time to. I mean, actually, as a in the career of designing, I'm only scratching the surface at the moment. I'm mostly talking about my time when I used to be a developer, and I used to do this by myself. So it's about standards, right? Some standards are, we want it fully accessible. Some standards are like, we want the code to be fully maintainable in the future. But some of them are like, yeah, we don't really care about accessibility, nor we don't really care about, I'm very crude right now, but, and we don't really care about code maintainability. So we have room for animation. The way you can do it is also like, as I said at the beginning, like bring sensitivity of animation to your team. The more you bring the sensitivity, the more they are going to see the value in it, and I see it actually when I talk to my colleagues. They're like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm ready for that. I really want to do this, and it really comes with time and patience. I would say ultimately, especially when you're starting with a team that is not animation savvy. I would say.
Yeah. Another question from the team, not from me, but it's pretty interesting to see, how do you learn about animation? Did you read some books? Do you have any references or website?
Well, it's mostly about looking around and copying. Once again, I'm crude about this, but it's true. When you see something that you really like and you're passionate about, could it be wherever you see it, movies, video games, as I said, other websites, try to imitate it a bit, try to dissect. Next time you are on the television and you see like some advertisements that use motion design, for example, try to pay attention on how the design is made, what is the timing of each frame, for example, each scene, sorry. It's a lot about looking around and try to copy
stuff. Okay, well, thanks. Yeah. The question from the chat. This one: have you done any animation on added effect that is not possible to code? And what was your alternative solution so developers cannot achieve what you design?
Sorry, can you come again? I didn't.
Have you done any animation on After Effects that is not possible to code? And what did you do? How do you get around that? What was your solution?
Actually, it might have happened. I don't fully remember that. But if that would be the case, I mean, I try to be. As I said, I was a developer, and I know the pain of web development. So I try to be as understandable as possible, and I'm trying to use like stupid effects like motion blur or anything like that. If there is an impossible animation, well, I wouldn't do it, I would say. I would talk about it with the developer and say, like, can you do this? Or just export it as a Lottie file, for example, and then you put it to the website, if it's not interactive.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about Lottie. I had a question about it. Did you already use it on your project, or had used it on the past? And it was, I'm not sure it was, how can I ask that? Does it help developers implementing pixel perfect animation to use Lottie and stuff like that?
Does it help for developers?
Because it's pretty huge to implement, right?
Lottie?
When you get a Lottie implementation, it's pretty huge, no?
No, we didn't say that, actually. All you need is actually your After Effects. I mean, of course, it takes time to make your animation on After Effects, but the implementation is actually very easy. I invite you to see the documentation for Lottie.
Yeah, I never used it.
The API is actually fairly standard, I would say. It's like play, pause, reverse, scrub, and that's all. You even have a fallback for canvas for
and the resulting
prehistoric.
Yeah, and the resulting file is not that much huge. The resulting Lottie file is quite.
It's a JSON file which is being interpreted. If you talk about like the weight.
Yeah.
No, it shouldn't be that. I don't have a number in my mind, to be honest. And
I
once
remember-
again, it depends on the complexity of the animation. The more layers you have in your After Effects file, the more shapes you have, obviously, the bigger it will get.
Yeah, I remember working on projects using Lottie, and it was like huge in the pain to use it because it was so slow to implement and to run the animation because of those layers and shapes, I think.
Mm-hmm. But if you see on the documentation, you will see the recommendation from the team. So for instance, like, don't use all those presets in After Effects. Don't try to use expressions, for example. Use simple shapes. I mean, it's mostly like primitive shapes. I haven't looked at they have a roadmap of implementations from After Effects to the web. Probably with all you can, with everything that you can do with SVG filters, for example, they might have done something great. I'm not aware of that, but probably it has gone better.
And so I have a question for you. Do you have any library that may help developers to create animation faster? Pre-coded library for ease, bounce, stuff like that.
So the one that I know the most is GZAP, right? GZAP is amazing. It's like, it's as if you would be a motion designer, but on a web editor, a code editor, sorry. It takes you basically, it has a lot of good features. For example, the most annoying part and the most time consuming part in web animation is, I think, to fine tune. I mean, yeah, you have like all the heavy lifting at the beginning of like implementing it, making it responsive, have it accessible, like all this stuff around. But I think the part that takes the biggest part of the process is the fine tuning of the animation. What should come first? At what time? How fast? All these little things. You have to talk with your designer a little bit about that. But with GZAP, you can have a timeline. So it will be like your first step, and then your second step, and then your first step. And each one of those steps will have their timing. They have callbacks. They have, I mean, really go for it. It's amazing. And there's also a lot of mini plugin inside GZAP that also helps you a lot for staggering a lot of animations, for making stuff 3D, for playing with letters and words and animated characters or lines or words. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, Mark, thank you. Thank you very much. Next question is from the chat. What's your workflow on EA, and do you create a new line for each component? How do you work? How do you communicate with the developers?
I'm sorry, Kevin, but we might have a problem here. I don't really hear you pretty well. You have a very robotic voice right now.
Do you hear me?
I hear you with a very robotic voice that is not understandable. Yikes.
Oh, okay. I will take over the thing.
Thank you.
So we had one question. It's from Laura. What is the workflow you're using in Adobe After Effects regarding the component? Do you create a new doc per component?
Yeah, that's a good comment. Question, sorry. So whenever you start an After Effects file, it's like first I name all my layers. Name all your layers, otherwise you're going to be lost in the long run. I cannot emphasize that. Name all your layers, and then I use as much as I can pre-comps. Pre-comps are going to save you a lot of time because it's like the equivalent of, if you're using Figma, for example, it's the same as components. So pre-comps are going to be like encapsulated buttons. So you can see your next button, for example, as like a pre-comp that you can implement in your master file. Use also master overrides. Master overrides are great when you have to like change a color, when you have to control all your palette or your content inside a button, for example. That's also a great way. But yeah, basically like the scaffolding is this way, like you have your master file, your master component, sorry, and then you have like all your folders containing like each one of them a component, and then you have your pre-comp inside all these folders.
Okay, Thank you. Another question. Do you recommend any particular collaborative tool to help improve the communication between designers and developers?
Not necessarily. It's mostly talking.
Okay.
I mean, remotely it's pretty hard. I know that when I'm at the office with my colleagues, it's much easier to just go next to them and point their screen and do the art director thing.
Okay, so basically you're just sitting next to each other and then do some pair development to integrate the animation.
I'm talking about the fine-tuning process here. But no, I mean, you have your, it depends. Like I've laid down like three ways. Oops. So maybe if you're taking the hard way, you can just take your Figma file, export GIFs or GIFs for every component that you're doing, or where you just have to make a video, for example, and then the lean way. Exactly in your Figma file, you also like say, okay, here are all the tokens that I'm using, here are all the timings that I'm using, and yeah, hope you make a good work.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, this one is a really subjective question. Do you think designers should create more interactive websites, mockups to help developers to achieve the goals? So basically, I guess in integrating animation.
If they should produce more animations to help the developers.
Yeah. Yes, I guess. I guess that's the point of the question.
Okay. I'll try to answer best. Again,
okay.
It depends on the team.
Yeah. Okay. So the question was, would you do you think interactive mockups or like a document where you define all those animation should that you should do more of them to help developer to create animation or not?
I still don't really understand the question, but I think I grasp it. So basically, the more you implement this process, the more you sustain a culture of like, let's put animation in our production. Again, I mean, I'm doing a parenthesis here, but you don't have to add animation in every project. It's like, when you feel like it, yes, it's good. It's not a go-to. But when you do it, it's very important at the beginning if you have a team that doesn't really fully understand the animation process, that you are the leader of that. Like, you are teaching them, like, this is how I do it. This is how it works. Here are all the numbers that you should put it inside. Here are also references. When you are making an animation, you can also use like references from other animations. Like you say, like, hey, look, there's this website, I got inspiration from this one, or there's this video, I got inspiration from that video. It would be cool if it would look the same way, but maybe a bit different. Maybe you can like slow it down, you can speed it up, whatever. I hope I did answer the question.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. If ever you didn't, people will pop up and just tell us again the question. Do we have any more questions? Okay, I don't think so. So we answer all questions. I will just have a look at the chat if ever we have any other question. No. Okay. Good. So.
Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you to you for your talk. It was really interesting.
Thank you.
It was really interesting also to have the point of view of developer, because most of the people at the Webmardi are usually from a designer, because most of the people at the Webmardi are usually devs. And it's also interesting to see from your point of view how we can collaborate better in order to add more animation on websites. So that was really, really interesting. So thank you very much for being here tonight and presenting your talk. Great.
Thank you.
So I guess we will continue. Yeah, I'll switch to present mode. Here we go. So the next talk will be in April. It's going to be on the 6th of April, and the talk will be in French. And so the topic is, what are the questions that you should ask yourself before joining a team? That's some question we usually think about when we get a new job, for instance, or when we try to change the career and do something a bit different. So this talk is addressed to junior devs, but not only. It can also be interesting for people that like to switch from doing something different. I guess there will be some question that can be applied to something out of only the dev area. So I'm welcoming you to join the talk on the 6th of April. You can already subscribe on Meetup. We'll be releasing this soon. And you can also look at that on our website. So one of our sponsors, LIP, is looking for people. They are hiring a shopware developer in Fribourg. And also they're looking for a UX UI designer in Fribourg. And there is plenty more jobs open for Zurich, St. Gallen. If ever you're looking to do a product, to have the role of product owner, or do some front-end development as well. So check that on our website, or on LIP website, sorry. Okay, as I said at the beginning of the video, you can all time watch our videos on our YouTube channels. You can find live videos if you want to have all the questions, or you can only check the talk. You can find them on our YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe so that you get notified when we'll release a new live, and you will be able to join and be with us during those events. Thank you again for attending this event. I'm looking forward to have you again in April. So have a nice evening. Cheers.